I was once a respected architect, with a beautiful wife and a future as solid as the foundations I designed. Then I lost everything. The night my world collapsed, I found him standing outside my home, waiting to take my wife out. I objected, but she said she wouldn't return until morning. What followed wasn't just the end of my marriage. It was the beginning of a ruthless battle to rebuild my life while the man who stole my wife tried to buy my soul. My name is Aaron Mitchell. I'm 38 years old, and until 6 months ago, I was one of the most respected architects in Boston. I had a successful firm, a beautiful wife, and a future as solid as the foundations I designed. Then it all came crashing down like a building with structural flaws. The first hit came when Westridge Development pulled out of our biggest project, a $50 million downtown revitalization that would have secured contract for years to come. Then 2 other clients followed suit, citing economic concerns. Just like that, I went from planning my expansion to wondering how I'd make payroll. I had to let go of 3 employees, people who'd been with me since the beginning. My business partner, Mark, started talking about exploring other opportunities. And through it all, Andrea kept saying the right things. We'll get through this. It's just a temporary setback. You've overcome worse. But looking back, there was a hollowness to her words, like reading from a PR script rather than speaking from the heart. The morning it all began to unravel was a Tuesday in October. I was at my drafting table before sunrise, redesigning a proposal that might save a contract with a small hotel chain, a job I would have delegated a year earlier, but now desperately needed. Andrea walked into my home office wearing the red dress I'd bought her for our anniversary. The one she said was too fancy for everyday wear. You're up early, I said, not looking up from my work. Big presentation today, she replied, smoothing down the fabric. The Hughes Group is looking for a new PR strategy for their luxury condos downtown. I felt a twinge of something, not quite suspicion, but awareness. The Hughes Group, Victor Hughes, the developer who'd risen meteorically while established firms like mine struggled. That's the project that was supposed to be mine, I said, turning to face her, before they decided to go with Leighton and Bell. I know, she said, her eyes not quite meeting mine. But Victor Hughes is a huge potential client, Aaron. This could mean serious money at a time when we need it. I couldn't argue with that. With my income slashed by 70%, Andrea's salary was keeping us afloat. Good luck, I said, turning back to my drawings. Knock him dead. She kissed my cheek. It was quick, perfunctory. Don't wait up. These initial meetings always run late. I nodded, already lost in measurements and calculations again. I didn't notice she'd taken her overnight bag until much later. I didn't question why a PR presentation would require a change of clothes. That was the first night Andrea didn't come home. That was the beginning of the end. That night, I stayed up late working on designs, barely noticing the time until I glanced at my watch. 1:38 a.m. Andrea still wasn't home. I called her cell, but it went straight to voicemail. Just checking on you. Call me. Simple. Casual. We'd been married long enough that I didn't want to come across as controlling. I tried to sleep, but the bed felt too empty. At 3 a.m., I sent a text. Everything okay? No response. By morning, I convinced myself there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe the presentation ran very late. Maybe she stayed at a hotel near the client. Maybe her phone died. The possibilities piled up like scaffolding around a building, flimsy structures concealing what would eventually be revealed. Andrea walked in at 7:15 a.m. as I was making coffee. Her makeup was fresh, her hair perfect, not the look of someone who'd been up all night working. Hey, she said too brightly. Sorry about that. The meeting ran incredibly late, and we had so much material to cover that Victor suggested I stay at the hotel where we were meeting. My phone died, and I forgot my charger. All reasonable, all logical, all lies, though I didn't know it then. How'd it go? I asked, sliding a cup of coffee toward her. Really well, she said, eyes lighting up. Victor loved our ideas. He's thinking of putting us on a monthly retainer to handle all their properties. Victor, huh? I said, noting the familiar way she said his name. Sounds like you two hit it off. He's very direct, she replied, sipping her coffee. No nonsense. Just focused on results. I nodded, turning back to the stove where I was scrambling eggs. A peace offering, though I wasn't sure why I felt the need for one. Well, congrats. We could use the good news. Speaking of which, she said, leaning against the counter, He mentioned your name. My spatula paused mid-flip. Oh, he said he'd heard great things about your work before. You know, before my business started failing, she meant. He might have some smaller projects that could be a good fit for you. I felt a surge of hope, then suspicion. You talked about me? Andrea shrugged. It came up. I mentioned my husband was an architect facing some challenges in the current market. So you told a successful developer that your husband is failing. The words came out sharper than I intended. Her expression hardened. I was trying to help, Aaron. This is exactly why I hesitate to bring things up lately. You're so sensitive about the business. I'm not being sensitive. I countered, feeling defensive. I just don't need my wife pitching me like I'm some charity case. Fine, she snapped, setting down her untouched coffee. I have to shower and change. I've got another meeting with Victor at 10. She walked out, leaving me with burning eggs and a growing sense of unease. Not just about Andrea's overnight absence, but about this Victor Hughes and his sudden interest in my professional situation. I didn't know it then, but Victor's interest wasn't in my architectural skills, and the foundation of my marriage was already compromised beyond repair. The next 2 weeks followed a pattern. Andrea would come home late, excited about the Hughes Group's projects, dropping Victor's name with increasing familiarity. I bury myself in work, chasing smaller contracts to keep my firm alive. The strain between us grew like hairline cracks in concrete, barely visible but undermining the entire structure. One evening, I decided enough was enough. Our marriage needed maintenance, just like any well-designed building. I closed my laptop at 6 p.m., something I hadn't done in months, and drove to Andrea's favorite restaurant. I secured a last-minute reservation by calling in a favor from a client whose office I designed. I walked into her PR firm unannounced, a bouquet of lilies in hand. Her assistant's surprised expression should have been my first clue. Is Andrea here? I asked. She left about an hour ago. She replied, not quite meeting my eyes. Said she had a client meeting off-site with Victor Hughes. Her hesitation told me everything. I believe so. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral despite the sinking feeling in my chest. Any idea where? The Lexington Hotel, I think. They've been meeting there regularly to discuss the new development campaign. I thanked her and left, flowers still in hand. On the drive to the Lexington, I called Andrea's cell. Straight to voicemail. Hey, it's me. I thought we could have dinner tonight. Call me back. The Lexington was one of Boston's premier hotels. Ironically, a building I'd worked on early in my career. I knew its layout intimately. The concierge recognized me. Mr. Mitchell, haven't seen you since the renovation. What brings you here? Looking for my wife, actually. She's in a meeting with Victor Hughes. His expression flickered. Recognition, then discomfort. Mr. Hughes is in conference room B. Should I call up? No need, I said, already heading for the elevators. I'll surprise them. Conference room B was empty. I stood there, surrounded by vacant chairs and water glasses, feeling like a fool. I was about to leave when I noticed Andrea's distinctive leather portfolio on the table. A waiter passed by, stopping when he saw me. Are you looking for the Hughes party, sir? Yes. They finished their meeting about an hour ago. Mr. Hughes reserved a private dining room upstairs for dinner. I should have left then, gone home, preserved my dignity. But something in me refused to back down from what I now suspected was happening. I'd built my career facing structural problems head-on, not ignoring warning signs until catastrophic failure. Which room? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. The waiter hesitated. Sir, I'm not sure I should. I pulled out my wallet and handed him $50. Please. The Beacon Suite, he said quietly. 8th floor. As I rode the elevator up, I mentally prepared myself for what I might find. Not just for the potential scene, but for how I would handle it. With dignity. With strength. Whatever was happening, I would face it like a man. The Beacon Suite wasn't a dining room. It was one of the Lexington's luxury accommodations. I stood outside the door, my hand raised to knock, when I heard it. Andrea's laugh. Not her polite professional laugh, but the genuine one I rarely heard anymore. I knocked firmly. The laughter stopped. After a long pause, the door opened. Victor Hughes stood there in shirt sleeves, tie loosened, a glass of whiskey in hand. He was exactly as I'd seen in business magazines. Tall, distinguished salt and pepper hair, confident to the point of arrogance. "Can I help you?" he asked, blocking the doorway. "I'm looking for my wife," I said evenly, meeting his gaze without flinching. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe even respect. "You must be Mitchell." Before he could say more, Andrea appeared behind him, her expression shifting from shock to guilt to carefully composed professionalism. "Aaron, what are you doing here?" "I thought we could have dinner," I said, holding up the now wilted lilies. "Your assistant said you were meeting Victor here." Victor stepped back, gesturing grandly. "Please come in. We were just discussing the HEARTBREAK campaign." The suite had a dining table with marketing materials scattered across it, and 2 half-empty wine glasses. A convenient prop for their meeting. I remained standing as Victor closed the door. "I've been trying to reach you," I said to Andrea. "My phone died again," she replied too quickly. "We got caught up in the details of the campaign launch." "In a hotel suite," I stated flatly. Victor interjected smoothly. "The conference rooms were all booked for an event. I have a corporate account here." I turned to him, my voice calm but firm. "I'd like a moment with my wife." He stood outside my house, calmly waiting to take my wife out. I objected, but she said she wouldn't return until morning. The memory of those words from my father about my mother suddenly rang in my ears. A painful family history I'd vowed never to repeat. "Of course," Victor said with practiced charm. "Andrea, we can continue this tomorrow. I think we've made good progress tonight." The double meaning wasn't lost on me. As he gathered his jacket, I noted how comfortable he was in this suite, how familiar with its layout. When the door closed behind him, Andrea immediately went on the offensive. "I can't believe you came here. You've embarrassed me in front of my biggest client." "Is that all he is?" I asked quietly. Her silence was deafening. "Aaron," she finally said, "it's not what you think." "Then what is it?" I kept my voice steady, refusing to shout or storm out. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like what I think." Andrea's eyes filled with tears, real or calculated. I couldn't tell anymore. "Things haven't been good between us for a long time. You're always working, always stressed about the business. So this is my fault." I asked, not backing down. "I'm fighting to save the company I built, the one that paid for your graduate degree, our house, everything we have. And your response is to start seeing another man." She didn't deny it. And in that moment, I knew. Andrea's silence confirmed everything. Yet standing in that hotel suite, I felt an odd sense of calm. Not the rage I'd expected, but clarity. "How long?" I asked. She looked away. "A few weeks. Since the first campaign meeting." "You didn't even try to deny it," I said, surprised by her directness. "What's the point?" She sank onto the sofa. "You're not stupid, Aaron." "No," I agreed, "just blind. Or maybe I didn't want to see it." Andrea ran her fingers through her perfectly styled hair. "It wasn't planned. Victor is he's confident, successful. He makes me feel alive, important." I supplied. "All the things I don't make you feel anymore because I'm struggling." "That's not fair," she objected. "Isn't it?" I moved to the window, looking out at the Boston skyline, buildings I'd once dreamed of designing. "The moment my business started failing, you found someone more successful. That's not why." "Save it," I said, turning to face her. "You know what's ironic? I came here tonight to try to save our marriage. To remind you that we're partners, that we've weathered tough times before." She looked genuinely regretful then. "Aaron, I do care about you. Just not enough to honor our vows." I walked to the door, then paused. "I won't be home tonight. You can pick up your things tomorrow while I'm at the office." "You're throwing me out?" she asked, incredulous. "No," I replied evenly. "I'm giving you what you want. Freedom to be with Victor without sneaking around. My only request is that you do it openly, not behind my back." "Where will you go?" The question surprised me, not because she asked it, but because I already had an answer. "To rebuild, Andrea. That's what architects do when the structure fails. We salvage what we can and start over." I left her there, surrounded by the luxury Victor Hughes provided. Walking through the Lexington's opulent lobby, I felt strangely unburdened. The doorman hailed me a cab, and I gave the driver Mark's address. My business partner who'd been drifting away as the firm struggled. "It's late to be visiting," the cabbie commented. "It's never too late to fight for something worth saving," I replied. Mark answered his door in sweatpants, surprised to see me. "Aaron, what's wrong?" "Everything and nothing," I said. I need a place to stay, and I need to talk about the firm. His expression shifted from concern to resignation. Look, about the business. I have a plan, I interrupted, but I need your help. One last push before we throw in the towel. Maybe it was my tone or the determination in my eyes, but Mark stepped aside to let me in. One drink, he agreed. Then you'll tell me this master plan of yours. For the first time in months, I felt a surge of the old confidence. Not because my problems were solved, but because I'd stopped denying them. Sometimes a clean break is the first step toward proper healing. Mark's spare bedroom wasn't comfortable, but it gave me space to think. By morning, I'd outlined a new direction for the firm. Smaller projects, sustainable design, residential renovations. Work that was recession-proof. Mark reviewed my notes over breakfast, skeptical but engaged. This means downsizing the office, taking smaller commissions. It means surviving, I countered, adapting instead of going extinct. After 3 hours of debate, he nodded. All right, I'm in for now, but we need capital to bridge the transition. I'm selling the house, I said decisively. His fork clattered against his plate. What? Andrea can have half the proceeds, but that house was always more her dream than mine. I sipped my coffee. I'll get an apartment near the office. No commute, lower expenses. What happened last night, Aaron? I gave him the abbreviated version. He listened without interrupting, then said only, I'm sorry. Don't be, I replied. It's clarifying. At the office, I called our remaining employees together. No sugarcoating, no corporate doublespeak. Just honesty. The firm is in trouble, but we have a path forward. It means smaller projects and tighter margins for a while. Anyone who wants to leave, I'll write glowing recommendations. Anyone who stays, you'll own shares when we recover. Their faces showed everything from fear to determination. By day's end, 2 had resigned. The 4 who remained felt like the foundation of something new. That afternoon, I received a text from Andrea. We need to talk. I replied simply, tomorrow. The cafe on Newberry, 10 a.m. Then I called a realtor and listed our house. That evening, I worked late at the office, reviewing potential small contracts we'd previously ignored. Around 9 p.m., my phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. Aaron Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell, this is Ray Donnelly. I'm head of facilities for Boston General Hospital. I straightened in my chair. What can I do for you, Mr. Donnelly? We're planning a renovation of our outpatient wing. Nothing flashy, just functional and on budget. Leighton and Bell submitted a proposal, but frankly, it's over-designed and overpriced. My pulse quickened. I see. Your name came up as someone who might provide an alternative approach. Are you interested? Very, I said, already reaching for a notepad. When would you like to meet? Tomorrow at 10. I thought of Andrea waiting at the cafe. Done. I'll be there. After hanging up, I sat back, realizing I hadn't asked who had recommended me. It didn't matter. What mattered was that when opportunity knocked, I was at my desk working, not at home wallowing. I texted Andrea. Need to reschedule. Something came up. Then I turned back to my blueprints, energized by purpose. When I finally left the office at midnight, the security guard looked surprised. Working late, Mr. Mitchell. Rebuilding, I replied. One blueprint at a time. The Boston General Hospital contract wasn't huge, but it was exactly what we needed. A steady project with a reputable client. I spent 3 days preparing my presentation, sleeping at the office and showering at the gym next door. When I finally met with Ray Donnelly and his board, I was exhausted but prepared. We don't need flash, I told them, spreading my preliminary sketches across the conference table. You need functionality, durability, and value. Patients don't care about architectural awards. They care about healing in a comfortable space. Ray nodded appreciatively. Refreshingly practical, Mr. Mitchell. Call me Aaron, I said. And practical is my new specialty. By the end of the meeting, I had a verbal agreement and a request for a formal proposal. As we shook hands, I had to ask, may I know who recommended me? Ray hesitated. Victor Hughes, actually. Said you were the most honest architect in Boston. The name hit me like a punch to the gut, but I kept my expression neutral. Interesting. Problem? Ray asked. Not at all. I replied smoothly. Just surprised. I walked back to the office in a daze, trying to understand Victor's angle. Was this guilt money? A peace offering? Or something else entirely? Mark was ecstatic about the contract until I mentioned Victor's involvement. That's suspicious. What's his game? I don't know, I admitted, but I'm going to find out. I called Andrea that evening. We hadn't spoken since the hotel confrontation a week earlier. I need to meet with Victor, I said when she answered. Business matter. Her response was guarded. What kind of business? He recommended me for the Boston General project. I want to know why. Silence, then. He's not trying to buy you off, if that's what you're thinking. Then what is he doing? She sighed. He respects you, Aaron. Says you're one of the few honest people in the business. I laughed bitterly. Rich coming from the man sleeping with my wife. Ex-wife. Soon enough, she reminded me. I'll text you his office number. Call him yourself. After we hung up, I stared at the Boston General blueprints spread across my desk. Did it matter why Victor had thrown this lifeline? The contract would save my firm, keep my remaining employees paid, and might lead to more hospital work. But it didn't matter. My integrity was the one thing I had left. I wouldn't compromise it, not even to save my business. I texted Andrea. Tell Victor the first appreciate the referral, but if he wants to discuss it, it needs to be face-to-face. Her reply came quickly. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., his office. I worked through the night, finalizing the hospital proposal, fueled by determination and black coffee. Whatever game Victor Hughes was playing, I would meet him as an equal, not a charity case, and certainly not a man defeated. Victor's office occupied the top floor of a gleaming downtown tower, one that my firm had bid on and lost 3 years earlier. The irony wasn't lost on me, as the receptionist led me through glass doors etched with the Hughes Group logo. Victor rose from behind an imposing desk as I entered. Aaron, thank you for coming. Thank you for the recommendation. I replied evenly, accepting his handshake with a firm grip. He gestured to a chair. Coffee. I've had enough to float a battleship, I said. Let's get to the point. Why did you recommend me for Boston General? Victor leaned back, studying me. Direct. I appreciate that. He pressed a button on his desk. Hold my call, Sandra. I waited as he gathered his thoughts. The architectural world is small, Aaron. Your reputation precedes you. Honest, practical, no nonsense. Boston General needed exactly that, not the overpriced light show Leighton and Bell proposed. And the fact that you're sleeping with my wife had nothing to do with it. His expression didn't change. Andrea and I. That's personal. This is business. They seem intertwined from where I'm sitting. Victor steepled his fingers. Fair point. But consider this. I didn't build my company by mixing business with pleasure. I recommended you because you're the right architect for the job. I wasn't buying it. And the timing? Just as my firm is on the brink of collapse. Opportunity often arrives when we need it most, he said philosophically. Call it karma. Call it strategic timing. Either way, it's genuine. Nothing about this situation feels genuine, I countered. Victor surprised me by laughing. I like you, Mitchell. Most men would have punched me in that hotel room. I considered it, I admitted. Yet you didn't. You maintained your composure, your dignity. That's rare. I leaned forward. Cut the flattery. What do you really want? Victor's expression turned serious. A colleague. Boston is booming again, but differently than before. Sustainable projects, community-focused development. Your firm has that expertise, while I have the capital and connections. You want a partner? I was incredulous. Not formally. Think of it as mutually beneficial collaboration. I stood up. I appreciate the hospital referral, but I'm not interested in any arrangement that ties my firm to you. Victor nodded, unsurprised. The offer stands. Think about it. Not for me, but for your employees, your legacy. I walked to the door, then paused. One question. Was Andrea part of your business strategy too? His expression softened slightly. No, that was unexpected. At least we agree on something, I said, and left. Outside, standing on the sidewalk in the morning sun, I felt something I hadn't expected. Strength. Not because I had a new contract or potential collaborations, but because I'd faced Victor as an equal and walked away with my integrity intact. My phone buzzed. A text from Mark. Boston General just signed the contract. We're back in business. I smiled, looking up at the skyscrapers surrounding me. Maybe I wasn't building monuments anymore, but I was rebuilding something more important. My life on my terms. 6 months after the confrontation with Victor, Mitchell and Associates had found stable ground. We'd completed the Boston General outpatient wing on time and under budget, earning us a second contract for their pediatric department. We'd hired back 2 of the employees we'd let go, and Mark had fully recommitted to the firm. I still hadn't sold the house. Instead, I'd rented it out to a young doctor and his family, using the income to secure a modest apartment near the office. My new space was half the size, but twice as functional, like the buildings I now designed. I was reviewing plans for a community health center when my assistant knocked. "There's someone here to see you," she said. Andrea Mitchell. I hadn't seen Andrea since signing the divorce papers 3 months earlier. Our communication had been limited to emails about the house and texts about remaining financial matters. "Send her in," I said, clearing my desk. Andrea looked different, more subdued in a simple blue dress, hair pulled back, minimal makeup. The polished PR executive image had softened somehow. "Aaron," she said, hesitating at the door. "Thank you for seeing me. What can I do for you?" I asked, professional but not cold. She sat across from me. "I want to let you know I'm leaving Boston. Victor's company is opening an office in Seattle, and I'm heading the PR department there." I nodded, unsurprised. "Congratulations." "Thank you." She looked around my office, smaller than my previous one, but with better natural light. "The firm seems to be doing well. We found our niche," I said. "Smaller projects, bigger impact." An awkward silence stretched between us. "I also wanted to apologize," she finally said. "Not just for the affair, but for how I handled everything. You deserve better." 6 months ago, I might have agreed bitterly or dismissed her apology entirely. Now, I simply nodded. We both made mistakes. Mine was ignoring our problems until it was too late. "You're being generous," she said with a sad smile. "Not generous, just honest." I leaned forward. "I hope Seattle is good for you, Andrea." She stood to leave, then hesitated. "Victor and it didn't work out. I'm going to Seattle alone." I wasn't sure what response she expected. Satisfaction, perhaps, or curiosity. Instead, I felt only a distant compassion for someone I once loved. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said sincerely. "I hope you find what you're looking for." After she left, I returned to my designs, making a small adjustment to the community center's entrance, opening it up to more natural light. Sometimes the strongest structures are the ones that let in the most light, even after being damaged. 1 year after that night at the Lexington Hotel, I stood on the rooftop garden of the completed Boston General Pediatric Wing. Below me, children played in the healing garden I designed, a space filled with color, texture, and safe places to explore. Ray Donnelly joined me at the railing. "You've exceeded expectations, Aaron. The board is thrilled." "It's fulfilling work," I replied. "More so than the glass towers I used to chase." Speaking of which, Ray gestured toward downtown. I heard Leighton and Bell is struggling. Apparently, Victor Hughes pulled several major contracts from them. I raised an eyebrow. Interesting timing. Indeed, especially since those projects might need a new architect. Ray handed me a business card. "The hospital board chair is on the development committee for the new arts district. They're looking for someone with your pragmatic creativity." I pocketed the card, making no promises. My firm was stable now, focused on projects that mattered. We didn't need to chase skyscrapers anymore. As Ray left, my phone buzzed. A text from Claire, the historical preservation specialist I'd been dating for 2 months. "Still on for dinner? Found a great new place downtown." I smiled, typing back, "Looking forward to it." Claire and I had met when the firm took on the renovation of a 19th century library. She was passionate, brilliant, and refreshingly direct. We were taking things slowly, both carrying baggage from previous relationships, but it felt honest in a way my marriage hadn't in years. Looking out over the city, I could see my past and future laid out like a blueprint. The mistakes, the corrections, the opportunities for better design. The old Aaron would have jumped at Ray's hint of high-profile projects. The new one would consider it carefully, weighing not just prestige, but purpose. My phone buzzed again. This time Mark, sending photos of his new baby daughter. "Meet your goddaughter," the caption read. Another blueprint, another kind of future. As I left the rooftop garden, a nurse stopped me. "Mr. Mitchell, the children in the cancer ward wanted you to have this." She handed me a colorful drawing of the healing garden, signed by tiny hands. I carefully rolled it up, more valuable than any architectural award. "The structures we build matter, but it's what happens inside them that counts. My life had been demolished down to the foundation, but I'd rebuilt something stronger, not just a career or relationships, but a man who understood what truly needed preserving and what needed to be redesigned. And for that painful lesson, I was finally grateful.